Hello and welcome to the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs, where we are talking about the stages of growth that every company goes through. Every startup goes through these stages of growth. And we've talked about stage one, stage two, stage three. If you haven't seen those, you can go look at the episodes. We are in stage four. And get ready, folks. Now you're a professional, okay? This is professional growth stage. And specifically what we're talking about is the stages of growth and the emotional intelligence required for each one of those stages. In this professional stage, the area you're going to want to focus in on for your company and the unique challenges that you face during this time are your competencies in teamwork, adaptability, and organizational awareness. And I'm going to go ahead and read the definitions for those so you have them top of mind before we jump in. So adaptability from an emotional intelligence and social intelligence standpoint is being flexible and open to change. Now you're an entrepreneur. I think you should have this one down by this point, right? Am I right, Raj?
Yes, exactly. 100%.
All right. So the second one is organizational awareness. And this is going to be understanding the social dynamics within the organization. Now you've got this growing group of people. It's not just this small group that you can really understand. Maybe you started with your friends. It was easy to understand the social dynamics. You're going to have to work a little more diligently to pick up on those social cues and be aware of the dynamics that are taking place within your organization. I would imagine at this point, Raj, you're really starting to develop a personality for the organization. It's starting to get embedded.
Yes, exactly. And Drew, one of the biggest changes here happens is you have between 35 and 57 employees.
Okay.
So it's a very, very big number of people there compared to the first three stages. And if you look at number 1, 2, and 3, the three stages, they were much more focused on the entrepreneur and the founding fathers of the company.
Okay.
Now, the biggest transformation is basically you're calling it and making it a professional company, and it is going to be more organization focused and moving away from the owners or the founding partners focus. That is the biggest change.
Gotcha. And that's why that third competency, emotional intelligence competency, teamwork, which is working effectively with others to achieve common goals. So not only do you have to have teamwork down for yourself, you have to be a builder of teams, I would imagine at this point. Is that right, Raj?
Yes, it's huge. So if you look at it from the stage 4, the professional piece of it, in this stage, the company has grown to a stage where they try to get outside knowledge, who have been there, done that expertise, to bring them over so that they can accelerate the growth. So let us say you have an outstanding sales team so far, but now you're getting into a different level. So you might go back and bring in a senior executive from a very, very seasoned company who has been there, done that, and they have built a sales team of 5 people to 25 people or 5 people to 100 people. It doesn't matter. And you're bringing in that person. And that is the piece of it. People will go back and recruit for the technical skills or their ability to develop a sales team. And the emotional intelligence along with that becomes very critical. You bring an expert, if emotionally they're not connected, if they don't have the emotional acumen, they will be leaving very soon. Or they don't fit into the culture and there will be issues, lost productivity, lost high employee turnover, all of those happens. And that's the reason why we are bringing the expertise, but we just don't want to hire people for their expertise, but even for their emotional intelligence. That is the critical piece of it.
That's so good, because I've coached people that have worked in very large organizations in their career, highly successful. They've come into a smaller organization with a smaller team and highly competent in the overseeing operations, but struggles in the emotional intelligence department. And it was a rocky road, how they bring me in to coach many times when you have a high performing person that is maybe, I love these people, but maybe they're kind of a jerk, and so they're very good at what they do. But if they aren't willing to work on the emotional intelligence side, like you said, it's going to be a culture killer. It's going to be an organizational killer, because you're going to bleed out people that just don't want to work in that environment.
Yes. And one of the significant pieces of it you would notice here is the CEO, the founding partner, whoever it is, they spend 70% of their time on being a manager and managing the teams.
Mm.
They spend only 10% on visionary pieces of it, and they will be only 20% on being a specialist. If you remember,
Okay.
they were spending 50-60% as a specialist in stage one.
Okay.
Now they have built the team, they have everything else. And that is where the emotional intelligence, because as a manager, you're working with a lot of your existing employees you built for the last 3 stages, and you're bringing in the new people. And now everybody, there's always going to be the new versus the old, right? I've been there, I've done that, I know this company versus, hey, I have been there, done that. I created processes for $500 million company. I'm coming as a guru and an expert. So
Yeah.
2 different conflicts or interests or egos, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why the leader has to spend 70% of their time managing that.
That's good. Well, we always want to make this practical, Raj. So what are some tips for leading your organization in stage 4, where you've got to develop this teamwork? So you have to have that emotional intelligence of teamwork. What are some tips for developing and empowering a high performing departments or teams throughout your organization?
So before we answer that question, one of the things is, this is a stage where they need to really build all of their foundational processes. So if you remember from stage 3, one of the things we said was financial. Basically, they have to go back and really build a good financial system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we identified is, if you look at the broad category, there are 14 master processes a business need to have. And
Okay.
by now, they have already built the financial piece of it. They have built the sales piece of it. And now they need to go back and start building the HR pieces of it. And that is where basically there's going to be a lot of training and everything else involved with that. They need to go back and bring and build a lot of new systems. When you have new systems, it is a different way of doing things. If you have a new process, there is more discipline and accountability in things. And this is the reason why that organizational awareness and the emotional intelligence becomes very, very critical.
That's good. So it's funny that you brought up processes and systems. I was recently working with an organization, and stage 4, you're saying do your processes at 35 to 57 employees. And I've been in organizations where we were at that stage, and we did begin to build out those processes, and it was a fight, and it was a struggle, because now we have to do our job and document how to do our job, at the same time. And and there's all this pushback, and you have to create job descriptions in maybe more detail than you ever have before. I was recently working with an organization that has 250 employees, Raj, and they haven't created processes. They're still asking their people. They had no onboarding process. It was all people that were in their position for so long that they knew how to do their job. Well, now they're vacating because time goes on, 40-year-old company, and they still had never created processes, but they have these 250 employees. And I'll just tell you, a lot of chaos, a lot of frustration, a lot of pushback. What do you say to an organization that has 250 employees, or what do you tell to the organization that's small that says, I don't think I really need to focus on these processes right now? What do you say to that organization?
So, Drew, based on my experience working with so many different companies, the first thing I say is go back and spend a few months getting your processes right, and you will see an immediate productivity jump of anywhere between 18 to 25%.
Wow.
So if you're looking at, let us say they're $100 million company as an example, how much equipment, how much effort you need to put to gain 10% productivity? That is $10 million. So I tell people and say, hey, what do you need to do to go back in 10 million? You can go back and recruit a couple of consultants, a couple of full-time people. Whoever it is will not cost you more than a couple of $100,000.
Yeah.
But look at it from an upside. Even let us say you get 1% productivity, just to be conservative, that is $1 million. So you've spent 50,000, 100,000, whatever that is required to go back and build your processes, and you'll see at least the worst case 1%, which is $1 million. Best case 10 to 15%, $10 to $15 million.
Wow.
That is the first thing I go back and tell people. And in fact, I had a company like that. They were a stage 3 company getting into the stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO told me that after we went back and worked, and I modified a few of his processes because I was directly coaching him. And I asked him basically, what exactly did you gain after the 6 months of assignment? He said, Raj, I got my freedom back. And I said, what do you mean?
Wow.
I never work on a Sunday. I have been working in this business for 20 years, and every Sunday I spend 3-4 hours. And it has been a few months since I never got to the office on a Sunday.
Mm.
And I got a big thank you note from the wife because she
You know,
got the husband back.
And that's with this organization, that's the exact feedback I got is I'm attached to my phone. Even when I take vacation days, I have my phone on me at all times. I'm expected to answer questions at midnight because there's multiple shifts and I can't take more than 2 days off. I mean, these are the types of things that people say. This isn't, this isn't pie in the sky stuff we're talking about. This is real life stuff that will affect your work-life balance. It will affect your bottom line. I mean, what more proof do you need that these stages put the processes in place? And that's coming from a guy that am not a process-oriented person. I don't, live to do that. My wife is all about the most efficient process. That's how our brain works. I have low IQ and lots of energy. Okay. So I get it done, but it's not the most efficient way. And I'm telling you, you've got to do this. I've heard the concerns from people that don't do it, and it's painful, and it's a challenge to keep good people when they can't hang out with their family.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly.
that's so good.
So bottom line, I tell people is you can get at a minimum 10%, even if you want to be conservative. I was telling 1% as an example for a financial company, but 10% is very, very easily achievable.
Yeah. That's
and
so
what
good.
What I tell people is, hey, 10% of it without doing much work. What can you do? How much business do you need to go and get to get 10% productivity, right?
Yeah. That's
and all the productivity savings directly goes to your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're not adding people, you're just getting more organized along the way.
Exactly.
So good. Okay, so let's talk about allocating resources for these new systems, acquisitions, and implementation. We're starting to grow. We're a professional company now. How does having the emotional intelligence of adaptability play into this phase in stage 4?
So the first is basically there is going to be some expenditure. That is where the 5 to 10% of investment into your new systems, the acquisition of systems or software or whatever that is, or bringing in consultants to help them with the required gaps or hiring somebody with that expertise. All of that will cost anywhere from 5 to 10%. But if you really look at it, you have come to a stage where what worked in your stage 1 and stage 2 will not work for you here. And that is where the unlearning and relearning comes into picture. We keep on talking about it, but this is a great example.
Yeah.
So that is the first piece of it. Try to allocate 5% of your budget, at least for your systems and updating that. And the second piece of it is now you go back and update your accountabilities, responsibilities, more like teams and functions, because now you are at a stage where you have the finance function, you have the marketing function, you have the sales function, you have the HR function. So now you're slowly growing and you're integrating everything else. So slowly you have few people here working on one responsibility. So we move away from the general skill set to a specialized skill set.
Yeah.
And that is the profession. So like HR, they're very good in doing HR. In a stage 2, HR might be doing HR, they might be doing payroll, they might be doing something else, compliance, quality assurance. And that was okay at that stage because we were still running a smaller organization, it was okay. But here, once you go to that 50 stage, a lot of state governments, there are a lot of legal requirements to be done. Under 50 employees, you behave very differently, but you get to 50 employees, there are so many legal compliance things. So you need that specialized skill then.
So at this stage, we've got all this change going on, and we have it at every level, but we're really, I do believe that's a big fight, but it's a fight worth having to challenge your team to slow down so you can speed up, right? Let's get smooth so we can get fast. That whole idea. How does organizational awareness play in? You're trying to read the the team and understand where they're at. And how have you seen that play out when an organization is in this stage 4 and the leader, the founder, is trying to kind of gauge where everybody's at? How do you balance that?
I want to give one example of the real-time example from a client I
Yeah.
worked basically couple of years ago. This
Okay.
was a company where we did the stages of growth. We went and did the assessment and everything else. So I had the top 15 leaders of the company there. And once we did the analysis and everything else, and the CEO saw it, I really loved him because he went back and said, sales and marketing, I want to stop growth for a second. Let us take a 6-month sabbatical. Everybody focus on a process, because we are a stage 4 company operating like a stage 2 company.
Wow.
So we had the tools to evaluate, and they said, okay, you know what? We are not doing that. We want to stop. We'll take the time. We'll make sure all of our processes are fixed before we start growing. So this was a $25 million company. And in the construction industry, most of the time you look at your pipeline, basically your book of business, already you have one, and that is there. At that time, they had maybe $3, $4, $5 million in pipeline.
Okay.
And every year they were doing maybe 1.5, 1.8 million in revenue every month. This year, fast forward, they have touched, the minimum was 3 million a month.
Wow.
And their book of business is over 20 million. So they're set, even if they did get a 0 contracts for the next 12 months, they're set until December of 2024.
That's fantastic.
So the CEO had the vision to go back and say, you know what, I'm going to shut down my sales and everything else and focus on this. Let me get everything going. Let me get my processes. And he built so much capacity in that 5-6 months.
So, okay, I've got to ask the question.
Sure.
I think all the listeners are thinking, how do you convince a sales team? I imagine they're compensated by commission, or at least a portion of their pay. How do you convince a sales team to stop selling or to slow down? How do you have that conversation?
So the first conversation is basically they need to grow the business. So they need to be responsible for creating their own processes. They're very good in sales, but they don't need it. So for them to really slow down and try to document their process and everything else, take a couple of months. And then after the 3rd month, 4th month, we went back and said, do the business development. Go and solidify your relationship with all of our existing. It is not that we are not going to push very hard, but we are solidifying the relationships. We are building and solidifying all the existing clients. It is not that we are shutting down shop, but the focus is not on aggressive growth.
Okay.
So it's almost like a hunter versus farmer. For those few months, they became farmers.
Yeah.
They're nurturing their existing clients, working with them, solidifying things while they're baselining and building basically the foundation of the sales process. How do you do an onboarding of a salesperson? How do you recruit a salesperson? How do you train them in the first couple of weeks? All of those fundamental processes were being built.
Okay. Well, and it's always, we know this in business, it's always cheaper to keep a client than it is to go get a new client. So
7x.
Yeah.
Acquisition cost of a new client is always 7x of the cost of keeping an existing client.
Oh, that's perfect. There you go. So seven times. That's fantastic. Okay. So we're talking one of the initiatives in this stage 4 is to establish disciplined cross-functional project management. And this is just my own question that I'm thinking through myself, but what have you seen for just creating a more disciplined workforce? Do you have any tips or any examples of things that you've seen to build more discipline into a team or an organization?
So one of the biggest thing that comes until now is basically everybody is doing everything. So the accountability is more what I call fluid.
Okay.
But now, since you're becoming a base of functional specialization, and that is what the project template. And one of the templates I always simply is a project charter. So it doesn't matter what initiative it is and which function is doing it. I tell them to go back and have a project charter. It's a simple 1-page document that can be say, hey, basically, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the goal of, once the project is completed, what is the goal? So what is its scope and what is not in scope? And then why is this very important for the business and why should the project be done today?
Yeah.
And then who is the project leader? A name, not a function, a specific name. And a champion who is higher above, who is going to make sure that all the obstacles for the execution are taken care of. And then identify a couple of team members and saying, these people need to support. And then a timeline and some action items, which the project is. All of this sounds a lot, but once you know how to use it, is on one piece of paper.
Yeah.
And once you have a project charter, anybody can look at it. If sales say, hey, I'm working on this, okay, where is your project charter? So anybody in marketing, HR, everybody can look at it and say, oh, this is what is happening in this department. So that is what we build the accountability piece of it. And in the project charter, what we do is we go back and have a communication cadence as well. So who are they communicating? Who are the stakeholders? What is the frequency of communication?
Okay.
So every single company, I would say, is start with a simple one-page project charter, just capturing this. You can build a lot of sophisticated project model templates and stuff, but this is the basic one any company can build.
Okay.
If you have the professionals coming from PMP, like the Project Management Institute certified people, they have some great methodologies. They're much more complex, much more beautiful. For bigger, complex projects, yes, those are wonderful. But as a growing company, this is a great starting point.
Yeah. I love your one pagers. You've got the one page strategic planning outline. So helpful. And it's really coming together for me as you were explaining it. To get more discipline in your organization is really the KISS acronym. Keep it super simple. Keep it super simple. What are we going to do? Who's going to do it? By when? So you've got the built-in simplicity of it. So you can do that consistently because it's right in front of you. You see it. You're going to have incremental growth within that. You're going to see a little bit of growth along the way. And there's accountability because we've all agreed upon what we're going to do by when. And that's going to build that discipline into the organization instead of every day showing up and letting your email inbox tell you what you're going to do for the day.
Yes, very, very important. And Drew, again, going back to the stage 4, we talk about processes, right? So one of the 14 master processes I always stress is the communication process. And what it is, a detailed communication plan for the organization for the year. So how frequently is the CEO sending a message and communicating? How much each department is communicating within their teams and with the stakeholders? What are all the different internal communications that need to happen? What are all the external communications that need to happen? So that becomes part of the strategic planning, and you create a process around it. So they can change and adapt, but at least the basic infrastructure is there. You know what? Every month there'll be a CEO update on the status of the finance. Basically, sales leader will go back and tell us on a monthly basis what is happening with our sales. Marketing will go back and give us a view of the competition. Operations will go back and say how efficiently are we building the product or servicing the client or whatever metric and products we have. So all of those things at the department level and the organization level, we have a process for that. And that process becomes very critical in the stage 4 company.
That's so funny that you mentioned communication. I was asked today I was having a conversation with a marketing director of a MBA program. And she said, hey, I'm curious about your coaching. What is like the one thing that people always come back to that they need in coaching? And I said, almost always it comes back to communication.
Yes, exactly.
There's a communication breakdown. People are frustrated because they don't have the information they need to do their job. People are upset because of how someone communicated something. Just so often your communication skills. I mean, there's the great quote from Warren Buffett. He said, if you want to increase your personal net worth or your value by 50%, work on your communication skills, both written and verbal. And I think that's absolutely true. If we focus on our communication and how we communicate and really think through when we communicate, what is the person going to receive? What is their potential response to what they receive? And what will my response be to their potential response, right? Yes. It is a couple of steps. You're thinking a couple of steps ahead, but you're an entrepreneur. You're a founder. You're a business owner. You've got to think a few steps ahead and with every move that you do, and especially in your communication. Well, this is huge. We've talked about adapting. We talked about teamwork. We've talked about organizational awareness. Anything else you want to say before we sign off for this episode?
I mean, basically, there have been a lot of people who really appreciated the document we created. We have a document, which is a 4-page document talking about the 14 master processes. So I really want to offer that to any of our listeners. If they just want a copy of that, send an email to advisor@vrt9.com.
Okay.
That is the email address. As soon as they send it, say, please send me the 14 master processes in the subject line, and they will get a copy of the document.
That's great. Advisor@vrt9.com.
Yes.
And put in the subject line the master processes. And we'll also have that email address in the notes below, so you can click on it and send an email. That's valuable. I need to get a copy of that. I probably have it somewhere, Raj, in my Raj file, but
yes,
I would love a copy of that, because I think that's so valuable. Being a person that is not, I'm a visionary, right? I'm a visionary person, and I dream big. I have ideas. I bring ideas to the table, but I see the value in processes. I've seen it at work, and I've seen it when it's not in an organization, and all the dysfunction that comes with it. And so just vitally important to the organization. So that's huge. Thank you for giving that to us all. That's fantastic.
You're welcome. And for all the leaders, I would go back and give you a caution. This is the time, if they don't really manage the emotional intelligence of the teams, there's going to be a clash between the existing and the new. And that is something they need to be managed. If not, they will lose a lot of good, smart people from the past, because they are not changing, but they have the knowledge, and they don't like the new processes, the new systems and changes, and they might live along with that knowledge management. So they have to be very, very cautious about it, because we see a lot of turnover in this stage when it is not managed very well. That's the reason why the emotional intelligence in stage 4 is very, very important.
Yeah. No self-inflicted wounds here. You lose people already. You have we ask people to adapt to change in a lot of things, because there's a lot of changes just in the environment the business environment that we're in. Don't create moments where your team has to adapt to change because you fail to communicate or you fail to properly plan. I think that's such valuable information, Raj. That's great. Wow, that was a powerful teaching right there, and insights about stage 4, 35 to 57 employees. If you're in that zone, make sure you email Raj and you get that download absolutely free. So much valuable information here. Listen to it again, understand the competencies you need, and make sure you tune in for stage 5. It's going to be great, and we're growing and having a great time here. So we're going to sign off this time. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Sure. Thank you, Drew. All the best, listeners. Go back and make it happen.